All right, well, good evening. We want to honor everyone's time and get started. My name is Carrie Wozniak, and I am the Superintendent of Fraser Public Schools, and I am so grateful to be here with all of you this evening. I'm also joined by Kristin Ledford, who is our Director of Community Relations, who will be helping us facilitate our webinar tonight. So I'm going to move into presentation mode here so that we can get started. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. This is one of our first webinars that we're doing. And tonight we're really going to focus in on our virtual school in Fraser and talk a little bit about Back to School 2020. I just want to take a moment before we get started and say thank you to all of our community members, our staff, our students, and all of the people that have worked so hard to help us through this pandemic. It has been truly a challenging, we use the word unprecedented time quite often, but we've really all come together to do what's best for our students. And I just want to thank everyone. And our Board of Education has been paramount in supporting our district as we've moved through this incredible experience. And today I hope I can give you some information and provide you with some resources and some things to think about as we move forward into the school year. I know there is a lot of uncertainty right now, and there are a lot of information's flying at everyone at a record pace. And we're trying our best here in Fraser to be thoughtful and really listen to all of our stakeholders and bringing people together to talk about what's best for the fall of 2020. So I want to just talk a little bit about what we're going to experience the next hour and a little bit about our agenda for the evening. First of all, this is a webinar, so you're going to see as people are coming in that we're recording this, and we will be posting it on our website. There's also some handouts that are available that I'll talk about a little bit more. And there's also a space for questions. So after we go through the overview and discussion regarding our virtual school, Mrs. Ledford and I are going to be taking questions that we received from the community prior to this webinar starting, and then also some questions that we're getting in the chat. So the first thing we're going to spend some time on is just talking about our current reality. Then I'm going to share some options for the fall. We really are trying our best to provide our families with choice and options. We're going to also talk a little bit about the Fraser Public Schools Return to School Roadmap. We've got 5 district committees of different staff members and stakeholders that are working on some very specific areas of focus with regards to return to school. Then we'll spend some time talking about our K-12 virtual option and really giving you an opportunity to learn more about what that experience is going to look like. And like I said, we'll wrap up with some Q&A from our parent survey questions and what we see in the chat tonight. I also want to stress that this is one of the first of additional webinars that we're going to have. We've scheduled a second webinar for July 29th. We just got that on the calendar today because we had a lot of questions regarding safety protocols for return to school instruction. So I will be bringing in Mr. Dan Waters, and who's our Director of Operations, Maintenance, and Transportation. And we're going to share with you what those school safety protocols are going to look like in the fall. So again, this is just one of a series of webinars we're going to be putting together to really make sure all of our families feel confident and have a good understanding of what the fall of 2020 can bring. So with that, I want to just start out with a quote I often use when I'm working with our staff, with my team, central office, our Board of Education, and we try in Fraser to be proactive versus being reactive. And I love the quote that says, "I cannot change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination." And we try very hard to be proactive and as transparent as possible in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think that's what was one of the things that makes Fraser such a special place, is you can count on your leaders, your teachers to all be proactive versus reactive. We want to own our destiny, and we want to make sure we're giving our parents as much information as we possibly can. And I always go back to our strategic plan. Fraser's been known for always having really strong strategic plans that guide their work. And I think in a time where there's so much uncertainty, having a strategic plan that keeps our students at the center of everything we do has been so important. Before the pandemic, we spent months talking about our portrait of a graduate and the things that we felt were important for our students to have when they walk across that stage at graduation. And we talked about the importance of, creativity and character and citizenship, and so many of those important skills and attitudes became so evident when we were working through the pandemic. And we've always kept that idea we needed to design learning for all of our students, no matter what the situation was. And that's remained our focus. And those 4 areas that we always strive to keep our work centered on have never been more important. Our strong digital ecosystem has been incredibly important throughout this crisis that we've all been experiencing. Those relationships and the learning environment that our teachers and staff work to build each and every day have been critical to that transition to virtual learning. And we have such strong teaching practices and such trained and professional educators that bring the best practices to our classrooms, both virtually, face-to-face, and in a hybrid model. You're really getting a quality experience no matter what format education was being delivered in. And I think that was more than evident the last few months of school. So that really was important for us to fall back on and keep in the forefront of our thinking as we've been planning. So tonight is really about, though, what will school look like this fall? And I think it's important that as parents, as teachers that are on the call, staff members that are on the call, my admin team members, all of the different stakeholders that are on the call, from Latchkey to O&M, we want to make sure everyone understands what we're using as our core resources to build a plan for the fall. And there's really 3 documents that we've been relying on. One is the return to school roadmap that the governor has used and relied on. There is the My Safe Start plan, which the governor put out in May, that talks about the various phases the state of Michigan is in. And then the most recent document that we've been really studying and building out our plan for is the My Safe Schools document. And that is the return to school roadmap that Michigan educators are following. At this point in time, as you know, Macomb County is currently in stage 4 of the governor's plan, and that really directs a lot of the decisions that we have to make around educating our students this fall. And I want to take a few minutes to talk about some important things that as educators and as parents and as community members, you're going to want to know about that My Safe Schools plan. And I've attached this little FAQ in the handout section, and I've also attached a couple of other key documents. That My Safe Schools plan, the whole big document, is in the handout section, along with the governor's phases. So those 3 documents are available for you in the webinar, and they also will be posted on our website along with this PowerPoint. So you will have all of these resources after the webinar is over. But I want to stress that Governor Whitmer has released this return to school roadmap, and it has the phases of the state as part of that plan. So as we move through phase 4, or if we go back to phase 3, or we move to phase 5, there are some very specific things that we need to do as educators to make our schools safe for our children to return to. So there's a couple of really important things I wanted to make sure we talked about, because I've been getting so many questions, and as I started to look through those questions, I felt that this document might be a nice thing that you could share with other friends and family that kind of address those big questions. And one of the questions I get quite a bit is, what's the role of the local school district and our school board in reopening? And this really says it pretty clearly. The governor is determining, the when and where our schools can reopen, or if they need to close for in-person instruction. However, it's our job, and our board and the superintendent to determine the how and what that is going to look like. So we're right now working through, what does in-person instruction look like? What does hybrid look like? Or what does our remote instruction look like? That job of the how is our responsibility. And that is also to provide that curriculum, the support for our students and staff based upon the parameters established by the government and the governor. There's been lots of questions, as we all know, about, wearing a facial covering to school. And right now, the governor spoke today about the importance of, masking up and making sure we continue to keep our COVID numbers down. And I think it's important that everyone understands, in phase 4, which we are currently in right now, there's some very specific things about wearing masks. So pre-K-12 students all will need to wear a mask on a bus for transportation. Students in grades 6 through 12, they will need to wear a mask. And students in grade pre-K through 5, if they are in hallways, common areas, or if they're switching classes, they too will also need to be wearing a mask. And that is a part of being in phase 4. Now, I want to be clear, if we move to phase 5, it changes, and that's important that we're all understanding and we're aware of. So in phase 5, facial coverings are not required. We can certainly choose to do that, but again, there are some real significant differences between these different phases. I've gotten questions about temperature checks. They are not required to check student temperatures. Schools are not required to do that. However, we could do that as part of our return to school roadmap. I've gotten questions about sports. Currently, we're practicing, and we do have students social distancing and practicing. But again, we're going to be getting our direction from the MHSAA regarding fall sports, and that has not been determined yet. I know that is a question we all want to know about. And at this point, we are allowed to practice and condition, but we are not given a directive as whether or not fall sports will be played. We're allowed to also have extracurricular activities, things like band or after-school programs can practice right now because we are in phase 4. And we have been monitoring that very closely and making sure that that's been done outside. So those were some of those big questions I've been getting. Probably the biggest question we hear is there going to be in-person instruction this year? Well, if we are in stage 4, we can certainly have in-person instruction, but there are going to be a lot of requirements, and I've talked to you about some of those things. If we go back to stage 3, we are back to remote learning. So again, it's very important that we all monitor what stage we're in. And probably the best thing to continue to do is obviously, check out our website, watch these types of webinars to learn more about where we are at in the plan. And the last piece I want to talk about is there's so much concern when we do come back, if a child or a staff member gets sick. And we are required to work with our local health department to implement tracing and protocols that the health department has put in place to address that issue. So I think that is so important that we are working very closely with our county and the health department to make sure we have a plan in place if that does happen. Another important thing, if someone does, test positive, we work with the health department to make sure that those staff members or students are going to be quarantined and that they are supported, as of course we would do with anyone that was ill. So this FAQ, I hope, helps address some of the many questions I know that you have, and we'll continue to talk more about some of the questions that have come up. Another tool I wanted to share with the group tonight is a nice chart. I'm a big fan of a chart, and this really helped me understand very quickly some big differences between the 4, phase 1 and 3, phase 4 and phase 5. And again, this PowerPoint will be on the website, so you can very easily kind of look at what is the PPE equipment required, hygiene requirements, and a little bit more about spacing and movement, because I know a lot of people have asked me questions about that between the different stages. So that's a lot of information. And I know that now more than ever, we need to continue to be committed to our Fraser family. I've never been more proud to be part of an organization or a school district than I have the past year of being your superintendent. The things that we did as a community have been remarkable, from our drive-through graduation to the tireless work of our food service department, passing out thousands of meals, to the teachers and the administrators and the countless go-to meetings that we had to bring students together to continue their learning is just remarkable. The things we've done these past few months is just really a testament to this community and to the staff that works here in Fraser. And I know we're going to get through these next couple of months. I know there's a lot of uncertainty, but we're really being thoughtful about what our next steps need to be. And that, I think, is what is going to be a strength that we have come the fall. And I want to talk a little bit about that, because we know that we're in stage 4 right now, or in phase 4. And that is a challenging place to be, because there's a pretty dramatic difference if you go up to phase 5 or, we go back to 3. So there's a couple of things I can assure you of. We are moving forward with our virtual option for any student that wants to make that decision, or any family that wants to make that decision today. And you can go online and you can register for that. I think it's so important that our teachers right now are working hard to make sure that you will be receiving the best possible instruction. I've been so proud of the collaboration I'm seeing at the elementary and the secondary level to really be thinking about what that direct instruction is going to look like for our students. And I think even more important is the work that they're doing with our virtual school will put us in a great position if we need to pivot and have our entire school district move to a virtual mode of instruction. And that is crucial for everyone to understand. We want to make sure that the learning that is happening in our virtual school is going to be something that can be where we can pivot to if we need to do that. So please be assured that that rigor that you find in our virtual school is at that same standard that you get with our face-to-face learning. So there really is these, what I like to say, kind of 3 basic options we're in right now, where we're going to be back to virtual, or you may select the virtual option. If we're in phase 4, we're going to return in the fall with the staff reporting, at their regularly scheduled hours, and we're going to follow the protocols put in place by the governor. It's important to note that we may have to adjust the schedule at the beginning or at certain points to make the schedule work and to have things kind of start off smoothly. And we're working through that right now. But the goal with phase 4 and phase 5 is that return to face-to-face instruction. At any point, the governor could come in and close down the school, and we could be shifted into our virtual learning plan. There are also cases where if for some reason there was we had an outbreak at a building or something like that, that could be another reason, obviously, to shut down and have to pivot into that virtual environment. So again, we want to make sure we're flexible and we're prepared for all 3 scenarios. So how have we been doing that? How have we been building that plan? I'm so proud to say we have over 100 of our staff members from all areas in the school district, a part of our Return to School Task Force. And they're reaching out to community members, they're reaching out to parents, and we're working on making sure we hear from all of our stakeholders. And this is an ongoing process right now. And that task force has 5 committees. We have a mental health and wellness committee that is really looking at how do we support students and staff with mental health. And we have a curriculum, instruction, and technology committee. Those 3 committees are looking at the virtual school, our instructional practices, and then obviously our technology, and making sure we are prepared with all of the infrastructure needs with that technology. And then our last committee is our health protocols and safety committee, and that is being led by our Director of Operations, Maintenance, and Transportation, Dan Waters. And at our next webinar, I will have him here, and he will really be able to talk through many of the health and safety protocols that we're working through. Because when you look at what the governor is recommending, there are a lot of things that we need to make sure we're putting in place as a district in stage 4. So with that being said, I'm going to take a couple of minutes now to talk about what does Fraser's virtual K-12 plan look like, and what do those options look like for our families. There really are, what I like to say, two options right now for you to consider. And this is a time where we want to make sure you have some control in a time where we feel like we don't have much choice. And this virtual option is going to be available to all of our students K-12. And it really is about providing options and choice to our families. In the fall, we know that families are, concerned about, planning, daycare, all of those things with going back to work. And we are working on making sure that our virtual option is ready to be up and running, the start of day on September 8th. That will be online learning at home with a teacher, a Fraser teacher, providing direct instruction virtually. If possible, we are going to look to bring in small groups of students in for assessment and some key instruction. So perhaps every other week or every third week, students will be brought in to do things like the DRA or a running record or some of those assessments you might be familiar with already. Our elementary teachers have been really working hard to think through what that day is going to look like to make sure that we keep that community of learning that's so important for our little learners and our smaller children at the elementary level. There's also our option of the traditional day, where we will be in phase 4 at this time, and there is the potential for a shortened or a staggered day as we begin the process. That has not been determined yet. As we work through our back to school plan, our goal is obviously to get kids in school, 5 days a week and have them learning in the building, but we know due to the pandemic that might not be possible. So you have those two choices right now. Another piece we're working on for our families is, if we do have to be in that virtual school model, is to be able to provide some form of childcare for our elementary students. So that is something we're also planning for as well. So as we are, fine-tuning our plans, we will be able to give you more detail by the beginning of August. But the virtual school option right now is available. You can register. It will be available for registration until August 26th, where you can make that choice. So I wanted to also talk a little bit about what it looks like for the 7th through 12th. It's a little bit different. There are 3 options. Fraser High School has always offered hybrid classes during the school day. So there's a kind of a middle model where you would be able to select either fully virtual, and you will be able to select from our course catalog a specific group of classes where you could be fully virtual at home. There's also a middle model where you could do a blended schedule. So let's say you were in a CTE class or band or choir, and you still wanted to attend those types of classes, and you wanted the rest of your day to be virtual. That blended model is also available. And then our third option is your, again, your traditional day where you're, registered for your 7 classes, you're, on campus, all, through that, for that entire time. So at the secondary level, because we've done blended before, we have a little bit more flexibility. So you could even have, 4 virtual classes, blended, the hybrid AP US history class that we've been offering for many years now, and then band. So you can have a little bit more flexibility with that schedule. So again, you really want to talk to your child and maybe think about what might be best, the online or that blended model for them. And again, if we have to pivot back to virtual at the secondary level, those classes would be then all shifted to virtual. And I think that's really important to understand, is that it's our teachers that are developing those courses, and they've been doing that for years now, developing that curriculum within Blackboard and providing that instruction. So I'm just going to take you through a sample of what a elementary day could look like for a student. One of the things that's important at the elementary level is we're really trying to be mindful of things like screen time, of also making sure that parents know that they have to be a learning coach to their child. Just like when we were in our virtual experience last spring, we know that students need help getting online, gathering their materials, and having that learning coach is a crucial part of making their virtual experience successful. So some of the things our teachers have talked about, that importance of that morning meeting where kids come together and, you go over the agenda with them, and having that direct instruction is really important. That will also be recorded, because we do know, there's going to be times when you won't be able to make something. Everything will be recorded so you can either experience it synchronously or asynchronously. And you'll see when you look at this chart here that there are opportunities for whole group instruction. So you can plan your day, accordingly, and know when there's going to be opportunities for face-to-face time with your teacher, and when there's going to be opportunities for independent time where you're going to be having your child do some independent work. We also know that there's going to be a need for some small group instruction. So your teacher may say, I want to see these 5 children, from 10:30 to 10:45 to do some small group work. We want to make sure we're also including specials into our online day, so that will change daily, and those opportunities will also be made available to all of our students online as well. And you'll see here, we put in time for some lunch. There's the traditional things that we believe in Fraser are so important. Those reading lessons, independent reading, guided reading, independent practice, the writing workshop, all of those things that we really believe are important in our face-to-face instruction, our classroom teachers are really thinking about as we started to build out that virtual day. So there will be opportunities for students to work independently throughout that day, but also to have some very direct construction experiences with our Fraser teachers. And that's important to be aware of and to be knowing about, because again, this model can help us if we do need to pivot into a fully virtual model K-12. We also want to make sure that you understand that you are going to have opportunities to come on campus for some various activities. And that would be scheduled and with the classroom teacher. And obviously, if you're medically fragile or have a reason where you can't make it to campus, we will come up with some alternatives for that. But I've listed just some common things. I'm sure if you have younger children, you're familiar with some of our reading assessments, Ames Web, our writing assessments. We know our math assessments have their math modules and different things along those lines. So that's important to be aware of. At the secondary level, our course design, I want to talk just briefly about that. Again, this is, again, the same course design our teachers are working on, and they've made some adjustments to that, but it's important to know that it's going to follow the same expectations, the competency work and rigor of a traditional Fraser course. There will be expectations for students to come together again at certain times for traditional instruction or direct instruction, and we're really working hard to make sure that students have those routines and agendas and are able to really leverage that executive function that we know is so important for them. And the key to keep in mind is that those expectations are the same for virtual, hybrid, or face-to-face. And again, if we needed to move to a fully remote setting due to a second outbreak, our secondary classes really could move to a online model pretty seamlessly because those expectations are the same. And right now we have a group of high school teachers, who are working together to make sure we have those common expectations and really some good philosophies in place to make sure our virtual learning meets that same level of rigor that our face-to-face classes meet. And again, we want to stress that this is an opportunity to stay connected, to your school district, and for our families to stay a part of all of the great things that we know makes Fraser such a, an amazing place. It gives you some choice and flexibility. You still have the opportunity to participate in things like band and choir or CT programs, clubs, sporting activities, all of those kinds of things are still available, obviously, based upon where we're at with the pandemic, but you do have those options, and they are available to all of our families, whether it be virtual or face-to-face. So I know I've been talking for a little bit right now, and I'm going to take some time to have Kristin talk a little bit about some of the questions that we've been receiving, and we're going to do a kind of informal Q&A, the two of us right now. So Kristin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
We got a lot of response with questions ahead of the webinar tonight. So thank you for everybody who took a moment to submit a question for us. I kind of grouped them by category. So starting just with the schedule, what is the expectation for the virtual program? Will it be different than the online learning that was done from March until June of this year?
Thank you, Kristin. That is a great question. I think it is going to be a little bit, it's going to be different. You know, obviously the rigor has definitely, is definitely going to be higher, and those expectations are going to be higher. We did a tremendous job preparing for the quick pivot that we had to make, but we know that in a fully virtual school, there are some different expectations, and that time commitment, the work demand is certainly going to be higher.
And this one applies to virtual and in person, but I got a lot. What is the first day of school?
It's a great question. The first day of school, I can say September 8th, whether it be virtual or it be, I wrote it down to make sure I got it right for everybody, whether it be virtual, hybrid, in person, it will be September 8th.
And we had several parents ask about our outside programs, the early college Macomb, or the students who go to Butcher, even the sixth graders who take classes at the middle school, or the eighth graders who take classes at the high school. How will that work with students who are in a virtual program?
Right. You know, that's a really good question, in the sense that, you know, we can control what are our Fraser programs. So students who are taking classes on our campus, so like you said, the math program or our accelerated programs, those are programs that we can, you know, make adjustments for. So if you're in that virtual program, you can be a part of. The Early College of Macomb program, we have a lot of students attending that. That will really be based upon what Macomb decides to do. And if they go completely online, then you would participate in their early college program, you know, in that online format. Regarding the IAM, that will be a county-wide decision on how the IAM opens and what their programming is going to look like this fall, and they have not made any decisions on that yet.
Will instruction be limited to during school hours, and will the lessons be accessible so that students can complete them later in the day if necessary?
Yeah, there was a question about, will instruction be limited to during the day, and will lessons be able to, you know, be turned in the next day? We'll use a similar model that we used during our, you know, online learning that we had in the fall. So you would be able to watch a lesson again, you know, there would be due dates, things would not be expected to be turned in that, you know, just during that time period. I think having the flexibility to go back, review content, and then have those deadlines be the next day or, you know, in a week, so you can really plan your week out, was very important. And I think one thing we learned in our virtual option, or the virtual experience last year, is parents appreciated knowing, you know, the work was going to be loaded up there Sunday, and you could kind of work through it and when things were due that following week. So we've learned a lot, I think, from our fall virtual experience that our teachers are reflecting on and putting protocols in place that should make things better.
Right. Several parents have asked about students with IEPs or 504 plans. How will they be supported if they choose to do the virtual option?
Yeah. This was a question related to IEPs and 504 plans. I know our special ed director, Mr. Meddy, has been reaching out to families to talk through, and he will be reaching out to those families to talk about the best way to make that choice. And if they are comfortable, it will be helpful if they're willing, you know, to bring their child in, like I said, for some of those more personalized experiences. That really helps make the virtual experience, I think, a little bit more successful. When we look at what had happened during the spring, we were so restricted in opportunities. No one could come on campus. No one could come and get, you know, social work or any kind of extra support. We will not be under those same strict guidelines if we are in phase 4 of the governor's plan. So we will be able to bring in students with IEPs or 504s for some extra, you know, so for some accommodations. And I think that will alleviate some of the concerns we had when we were working in the fall, or not in the fall, excuse me, in the spring. And that's really important to be mindful of. That interaction with your social worker or the speech pathologist or any of our ancillary staff is crucial for our special ed students. And I think when you can have those opportunities for those one-on-one experiences, our students are going to have a lot more success.
And as far as supplies go, whether it be for an art class or a textbook needed for a class, will students need those, and how will they pick them up, or how will they get them?
So the question was related to supplies. And again, we will be providing those supplies. And in this situation, we're obviously much more able to plan. And just like we've been able to distribute, yearbooks and other things since we've been less restricted, parents will come, pick those things up. We can, make those deliveries outside, and we will be providing the supplies that the students need to be successful in their virtual learning.
We got a lot of questions about teaching. So will it be Fraser teachers from my child's school teaching the classes? And will elementary students always have that same teacher if they choose the virtual option?
Okay. Sounds like there's been a lot of questions about teachers. Our teachers are, the backbone of this type of work that we're doing, and their thinking and the planning that they've done has been just crucial to making this work. And it will be Fraser teachers that are teaching those classes. They may not be from your elementary. For example, we have approximately 15 kindergarten teachers, and we're going to look at how many students register for virtual kindergarten, if that is the grade level we're looking at, and then we'll make the decisions on how those sections are being taught, just like we do every year. Sometimes we have an elementary school that needs 3 sections of kindergarten and another one that needs 2 that year. So we do have to make changes, and we'll look at our numbers that same way and do our best to to assign our teachers to the appropriate a number of students. But we're making sure that the class size you would normally have in a virtual kindergarten class is the same as what you would experience in a traditional classroom here in Fraser. That's really important to us, to make sure that we have that consistency. So like I said, if we needed to pivot to virtual learning, all of those teachers have been working together on that curriculum and that content. So whether or not you're first grade virtual, or first grade you were face-to-face and now you're virtual, all of our teachers are working towards those same common standards, competencies, assessments.
If a family is a new family to our district, whether they have a new incoming kindergartner, or they just moved here, or they're choosing us through school choice, what kind of technology resources would they need, or would the district provide?
Yeah, this was a question related to technology. Again, our technology is provided. So K-6 will still be, the iPad. And at the middle school, they will still have their iPads. We have talked about, and we're looking and planning for making sure at the middle school they have keyboards that go along with their iPad. And then at the high school, they all get their MacBooks. So that technology will remain the same for a new family or an incoming, school of choice family. That technology remains the same, along with all of the other necessary tools that they need. So for example, Eureka Math, journals, things of that nature, all of those supplies would be provided by the district.
Will the curriculum in the fall include what was missed from last spring?
Yeah, I know a lot of families have asked me about gaps in learning. How are we going to, catch students up from the work that we might have been missed or lost in the spring? And that is probably one of the most stressful things right now, is that lost learning. We know that occurred during this pandemic, but our teachers were remarkable in their ability to keep new content coming to our students. And they also did a remarkable job of making sure we really monitored what gaps might have happened. And I know we will be ready to articulate what some of those gaps are in the fall to the next grade level. And they've already been doing some of that work. So again, we have that piece in place. And then Fraser is very well prepared, I like to think, with our MTSS, multi-tiered system of support, and benchmarking and screening students. So we will, of course, start the year off with those screeners and making sure we're really looking at where our kids are at, and bring them along, which is what our teachers do all the time. They take students where they're at, and they grow them, and that's what we'll continue to do.
And For the secondary level, how will this look on their transcripts, and will students receive a grade, or will they just get a credit, no credit?
Yeah, their transcript will look the same. They will have the courses that, say English 9 or English 10. Those classes will be, just as rigorous as a class that you would have taken if you were face-to-face, and you will get a grade on your report card. Now, just like there is in our traditional model, there are times when if you, didn't pass the class and you're in credit recovery, you're going to go back for credit. There are times when credit is given. So, but that same practice will be followed with the virtual program. We're really trying to make sure that our virtual and our face-to-face program is parallel. And like I said, if we need to pivot to that virtual model, we're prepared to do that.
How will a student's progress be monitored? How will parents know what is completed and what work still needs to be done? How will parents know what is going on with their work?
So there was a question about how will parents know about the way the work is being assessed and completed. We'll continue to use PowerSchool. The same reporting measures that we use for face-to-face instruction will be used for the virtual instruction. We want to make sure, again, that there are very clear and consistent practices in both environments. Our parents will have access, like they've always had access to Blackboard or It's Learning, and they'll be able to see the work that needs to be completed and can help and support and monitor their students.
I'm seeing a lot of questions for the blended option. So how do parents sign up for the blended option? And then if they are in that, how will transportation be available in the middle of the day? Or how will we decide which classes are offered? How will they know which classes are
Sure.
offered?
So Kristin, I'll repeat the question to make sure everybody heard it. It was about the blended option at the secondary level. That is important to understand. You're going to let us know that you're interested in that at the secondary level. And what will happen is the counselor will reach out to you and you will look through the course book, because there are some classes that can only be taught virtually. And right now we've gone through that course book and made those decisions. But let's say you want 4 classes that are going to be online, like English 9, maybe your core, and you still want to come in for, band and a CTE class. So when we look at your schedule, it's going to be important to look at, and if anyone knows the high school schedule, it's an interesting schedule. They have the blue and gold days. So we're going to work to make sure, to our best of our ability, where you would have your, maybe your on-site days, maybe be a blue day. So you wouldn't be coming every day, or you wouldn't come at like 9 o'clock and then come the next day at 1:30. So that's going to be important that we have those scheduling consults with our counselors to start looking at that, and to really be mindful of that, because I do think that is going to be an option a lot of families are interested in, and not just because of the pandemic, because you may want that flexibility within your schedule. And I know the performing arts and our CT programs are really important to make sure we have those available to our students, and it's important that they're on campus for those activities.
Okay. And I'm seeing this a lot in the chat, and I know we got a lot of this question too through the survey. If you choose virtual for the fall semester and things improve, can you switch?
Yeah.
Or if you choose in person and you want to switch, can you switch, and when can you switch?
Yeah. That's a big question there. I get that question all the time about switching. How is that going to work? And I get it. I can only imagine how hard it is right now for families to try to make this decision. And I'm in the position of trying to staff and, make sure we have everybody in the right space. So we are trying really hard to keep the options open. That's why we've left the virtual choice open until the 26th. So you have until the 26th to make that decision with virtual for your family. We are going to allow families, like we do right now for school of choice, with regards to in-district school of choice enrollment. So hypothetically, you could do a elementary switch at the semester change in January. So in January, you can switch back to virtual or back to face-to-face, or you could select the virtual. But we are asking and requesting that it is a semester commitment. And then at the semester, you can make that transition back. And I know there's been a lot of questions and concerns about going back to their home school. So you're, a Emerson family and you select the virtual option. We will do our best to get you back at that building. And I know this is really hard to understand, but we can't guarantee it. It will be our goal to get everyone back, to their home building, but I can't make that guarantee in the middle of the year just due to staffing and, making sure our classrooms are ready to go and we're prepared with the other side of things, which is all of the things we have to do to get ready for phase 4 and making sure our buildings are ready to be opened. It really is going to be challenging to make that kind of a guarantee. So I believe it's important that we're transparent in saying our goal would obviously be to get you back if that was what you desired second semester, but I can't guarantee it. What we can guarantee or provide you with is a virtual option. And then second semester, if you do want face-to-face, it will be at one of our elementary buildings. It may not necessarily be your home building. We would do our best to accommodate that, but I can't make that guarantee.
All right. One of the questions that I've seen a couple of times too is about DK. So is this virtual option available for the DK students?
Right. We do not have the DK option or the virtual option for our DK students. We had a lot of conversation about that. Since it is a developmental program, we really believe that trying to do that virtually would be very challenging.
Is there an expectation that Fraser Virtual will continue after the school year?
Yeah. The question was, is there an expectation that Fraser Virtual will continue after the school year? I believe it will be continued after the school year. I think people and families and communities like the idea of some choice and flexibility with the way they learn, but like anything, it will be driven by the choice and the drive for it. So if we don't have people that are interested or families that are interested in doing this, and we end up with only 10 families, it doesn't make sense to continue something like that. But I don't foresee that happening. Again, we really feel that the drive for a lot of the decisions we've been making have been based upon what the community and what our families want and need. And we know that right now, a lot of our families want and need choice, and they feel more comfortable with this virtual option. And again, this is open to our entire county. So I do see that families are gonna, if they have a good experience, that hopefully they'll, that's gonna be something that they're gonna want to continue.
How do families sign up for the blended or the virtual option?
Sure. So the question was, how do you sign up? If you go to our website, www.fraserk12.org, you will see our Enroll Today page. And it's pretty simple. If you're a current family and you are interested in our online or hybrid option, we're calling it at the secondary level, there's a form that you will fill out, and then we will be following up with those families the first week of August to start the official registration process of selecting classes and getting you enrolled and whatnot. At the elementary level, similar, you'll sign your child up. If you're an in-district family that's already enrolled with us, you'll sign your child up, and at the beginning of August, we'll start to send the information that you need to, begin the enrollment process. And that includes, getting registration, your materials, things like that. So we'll get all that going and started that first week of August. And all that information is on our website.
There are several questions about class sizes. Are they anticipating the face-to-face class sizes being smaller in the fall, or is that something that's still being worked on?
Yeah, class size was a question. I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you we will be following our class size practice that we've always followed. So we've got numbers that we've always used before. And when I look at our enrollment, we look at all of those numbers. But again, it's early in the, in the enrollment process, and that's just traditional because we're in, July right now, and our numbers, we're taking in students, and we're looking at that right now. But some buildings have higher numbers than others, so I can't really answer that question.
If your child was already enrolled last year, are they automatically in the face-to-face program for the fall if you do not select virtual?
Yeah, if you don't do anything and you were the question was what happens if you were enrolled last year and you don't make any changes? Where does your child land? That's a a good point to make. We're expecting you to come back September 8th to our face-to-face experience. So if you don't do anything, you'll find out, who's your teacher. At the elementary, we're working through how we're going to have orientation for 8th graders coming over to the high school for 9th grade. Same thing for our 6th graders coming over to the middle school. We'll have a plan for orientation. We're working through that right now, and you'll get your schedule and your, all of that good information usually I think it's the 3rd week of August. So we'll be getting all of that information out. Great questions.
I just saw this question. If a secondary student has already made their schedule and they choose the blended or the virtual option, will they have to redo their schedule?
The question was, if you already, most students before we went fully virtual in the spring, all of the schedules are made. So students had signed up for their classes. So if you want to move to that blended option, you would need to fill out the enrollment form, and the counselor would follow up with you, and we would have to rework your schedule. That would be correct. So good point.
And then will there still be an orientation or meet the teacher events in August?
Yeah. So orientation, meet the teacher night was the question. I can tell you right now, we're putting a lot of different scenarios in place. We're planning for a virtual orientation and an in-person orientation, because we want to make sure we're ready for whatever stage we may be in come August. And it's been very important for us to plan for both scenarios. And I think that, again, makes our district very special in the fact that we aren't going to be surprised by wherever we land. We will be prepared to do something very special for our kids if it has to be virtual, and we'll be ready to go if we can go face-to-face. So the dates and the times that we traditionally have, we're going to stay within that window, but it will either be like I said, virtual model, or it will be face-to-face.
And I've seen several questions in the chat about if a student or a teacher is diagnosed with COVID, how will that be communicated to the people who need to know that?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions about if a student or a teacher or an administrator contacts COVID or contracts COVID, what will happen? We are required to report that to the health department, and then they will do the contact tracing. They provide us with that information. We will then have to take a look at who was in contact with that person that is sick, and then we have to shut things down. And that is what is going to affect a closure of a building, a wing. They've talked about that. I think a smaller building, it isn't a wing, it's the building. And it really depends on when the case is discovered, but that goes right to the health department, and that is what schools have been instructed in our county to do. Is they will handle that piece. They come in and they support you with that. Just to be clear, if a staff member or any staff member, not just a teacher, but it's required by law that you are paid for your 14 days. You don't have to use your sick time. I know that was a question that had come up. That is just part of the the COVID legislation that's come out there. So I want to make sure people understand that at the district level, we're working really hard to address these questions that we're getting, and we're continuing to do our best to compile FAQs that we can get out to people to dispel some of the rumors that people sometimes hear. So those are really, really good questions.
Right. And then I just saw this one. If a student is in the virtual program, are they still able to come and pick up a breakfast or a lunch or any kind of meals?
Yeah. The free and reduced lunches are available to all students. So just like right now, a student can get a free and reduced lunch. Those will be available to our virtual students as well. So the same things you get when you're on campus, you can have access to as a part of our virtual program. It's just important that when you do come on campus, you have to follow the protocols of whatever stage we're in. So again, the safety precautions need to be followed at the buildings that are required by that stage.
And that's most of the questions that we've gotten. There were a couple questions about more of the classroom setup for face-to-face, but I think that's what we'll talk about at the next webinar.
So Kristin just mentioned, I think we've tried really hard. I know it's difficult in this format to sometimes have, I like to think, a two-way conversation, but I truly appreciate everyone's questions. I always say there's no dumb question. I'm open, ask away. And I hope this was an opportunity to answer a lot of those questions. And like I said, this will be recorded. We're going to get it up on the website so more families can listen to it and get some answers, because right now I think information is one of the best things we can give one another. I know this is a lot to process, but like I said, we're all in this together, and I know we're going to come out stronger for it. I couldn't be more proud to work in such an amazing district. Again, on behalf of my team, central office, our Board of Education, they are so grateful for everything that our families, our staff, our community does to make Fraser such a special place. So we're going to be able to kind of wrap things up a little bit early here with 5 minutes to spare. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send myself or, Kristin an email, and we will be back in 2 weeks with another webinar where we'll start talking a little bit more about our safety protocols. But in the meantime, stay safe and be healthy. And again, thank you for your continued support, and we'll talk soon.